They gathered in hope but were met with silence and disbelief. The body of Edgar Lungu didn't arrive, and now the nation is demanding answers. What's really going on behind the scenes? Tensions are rising in Zambia as crowds gathered at the PF Secretariat were left stunned by the news that former President Edgar Lungu's body would not be arriving as expected. The delay has sparked confusion, speculation, and emotional reactions from supporters and citizens alike. Broken heart, in this video, we break down what happened at the PF Secretariat today, official government response, and statements from Lungu's family, how Zambians are reacting across social media and the streets, what this delay could mean for national mourning and funeral protocol, emotional interviews with those left waiting for hours. Speaking head, this story is still unfolding. Stay tuned for updates and exclusive reactions. Speech balloon, let us know in the comments. Do you believe the public deserves full transparency about the funeral process? Bell subscribe for real-time updates on national news, politics, and breaking developments. Zambia mourning crisis, a comprehensive report on Edgar Lungu's funeral developments. Introduction. The death of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu on June 5, 2025, in a South African hospital marked a pivotal moment in Zambia's history, triggering a complex and emotionally charged national mourning process. Lungu, who served as Zambia's sixth president from 2015 to 2021, was a polarizing figure whose legacy continues to shape the country's political landscape. His passing, at the age of 68, was expected to unite Zambians in grief, as is customary for former heads of state. However, a bitter dispute between Lungu's family, the Opposition Patriotic Front (PF), and the government led by President Hakainde Hichilema has transformed this period of mourning into a national crisis. The events of June 20, 2025, at the PF Secretariat, the government's decision to end national mourning, and the family's announcement to bury Lungu in South Africa have escalated tensions, leaving Zambians grappling with grief, confusion, and division. This report provides an exhaustive analysis of the events at the PF Secretariat on June 20, 2025, the official government response, statements from Lungu's family, public reactions on social media and in the streets, the implications of the ongoing delays for national mourning and funeral protocols, and the emotional toll on those affected. Drawing on available sources, cultural context, and critical analysis, the report aims to illuminate the multifaceted dimensions of this crisis, exploring its political, social, and cultural ramifications while giving voice to the ordinary Zambians caught in the crossfire. 1. Events at the Patriotic Front PF Secretariat today, June 20, 2025. 1.1 Background. The PF Secretariat as a mourning hub. Since Edgar Lungu's death on June 5, 2025, the Patriotic Front Secretariat in Lusaka has served as a central hub for mourning activities organized by the PF, Lungu's political party. The Secretariat, located in the heart of Lusaka, became a symbolic space for PF supporters, opposition figures, and ordinary Zambians to gather, pay respects, and demand clarity on the funeral arrangements. Unlike the government-designated mourning venue, a state-owned lodge in Lusaka, the PF Secretariat offered an alternative space where Lungu's loyalists could mourn free from state oversight. The PF established its own condolence book, organized vigils, and held press briefings, creating a parallel mourning process that underscored the deep political divide between the PF and the ruling United Party for National Development (UPND). The Secretariat's role as a mourning center was not without controversy. The government viewed the PF's actions as an attempt to politicize Lungu's death, accusing the party of using the venue to rally supporters ahead of the 2026 general elections. Meanwhile, PF leaders argued that the Secretariat was a necessary space to honor Lungu's legacy, given their distrust of the government's intentions. This tension set the stage for the dramatic events of June 20, 2025, following President Hichilema's announcement to end the national mourning period. 1.2 The Catalyst. Hichilema's address and the end of national mourning. On the evening of June 19, 2025, President Hakainde Hichilema delivered a televised address to the nation, announcing the immediate termination of the national mourning period for Edgar Lungu. The mourning period, initially set from June 8 to June 14, had been extended by 9 days to June 23 to accommodate the anticipated repatriation of Lungu's body from South Africa. Hichilema's decision was prompted by the Lungu family's refusal to repatriate the body on June 18, citing breaches in the agreed funeral arrangements. In his address, Hichilema stated, "We cannot afford a state of indefinite mourning. The government has done everything possible to engage with the family of our departed sixth president, and we must now allow the country to resume normal life." This announcement was a turning point, as it shifted the funeral from a national event to a private affair controlled by the Lungu family. The decision was met with immediate backlash from the PF, which saw it as a deliberate attempt to marginalize Lungu's legacy and suppress public mourning. 1.3 Dispersal of mourners at the PF Secretariat. On June 20, 2025, PF Vice President Given Labinda addressed a crowd of mourners gathered at the PF Secretariat, instructing them to disperse immediately and reconvene at Lungu's family home in Chifwima, a rural area outside Lusaka, for a private funeral. Labinda's directive was a direct response to Hichilema's cancellation of national mourning and aligned with the family's announcement that Lungu would be buried in South Africa in a private ceremony. Labinda's statement. Labinda emphasized the need for peace and dignity, stating, "We advised all mourners to leave the PF Secretariat Secretariat after HH's address. "We are respecting ECL's wishes for a private funeral, and we ask all PF members and Zambians who loved him to avoid violence or provocation from those mocking his memory." He thanked Hichilema for finally accepting that he is not wanted anywhere near President Edgar Lungu's funeral, framing the government's withdrawal as a victory for the family and PF. Seen at the Secretariat. Reports indicate that the Secretariat, which had been bustling with activity in previous days, was largely deserted by midday on June 20th, with only maintenance staff and a few party officials remaining. A Sun FM TV news check noted a notable police presence outside the Secretariat, raising concerns among some mourners that authorities were there to disperse crowds forcibly. However, no incidents of violence were reported, and the dispersal appeared orderly, though emotionally charged. Mourners' reactions. The atmosphere was one of confusion and grief. Many mourners, who had traveled from across Lusaka and beyond, were expecting updates on the repatriation process. Instead, they were told to leave with little explanation. Some carried portraits of Lungu, PF flags, and candles, singing hymns and party anthems as they reluctantly departed. A local resident, Grace Mwansa, described the scene. "People were crying, asking why the government is doing this to ECL. We came to mourn our president, but now we're told to go home or to Chifwema. It's not fair." The sudden shift left many feeling disenfranchised and uncertain about how to honor Lungu. 1.4 Political implications of the dispersal. The dispersal of mourners from the PF Secretariat was more than a logistical response. It was a strategic move by the PF to maintain control over Lungu's legacy. By redirecting mourners to Chifwema, the PF aimed to keep supporters mobilized and visible, reinforcing the narrative that the government was disrespecting Lungu's memory. Political analysts suggest that the PF saw the Secretariat as a potential flashpoint for clashes with authorities, especially given the increased police presence. Lubinda's call for peace was a calculated effort to avoid arrests or accusations of inciting unrest, which could have damaged the party's image ahead of the 2026 elections. The Secretariat's desertion also marked a symbolic retreat from public mourning, signaling the PF's acceptance of a private funeral. However, it raised questions about the party's ability to sustain its influence without a physical gathering space. The move to Chifwema, a less accessible location, may limit participation, particularly for urban supporters without the means to travel. 1.5 Security dynamics. The presence of police at the Secretariat, as reported by Sun FM TV, added a layer of tension to the day's events. Some mourners speculated that the officers were deployed to prevent protests or gatherings in response to Hichilema's address. A social media post cautioned against insinuations of police intimidation, urging reporters to stick to facts to avoid fueling rumors. The government, through Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa, denied any intent to suppress mourning, stating that security measures were in place to maintain order during a sensitive period. Despite these assurances, the police presence underscored the delicate balance between public grief and state control. 1.6 Cultural context. In Zambian culture, public mourning spaces like the PF Secretariat play a critical role in communal grieving. The Secretariat's role as a mourning hub allowed diverse groups, PF supporters, religious leaders, and ordinary citizens to come together, share stories, and pay respects. The abrupt dispersal disrupted this cultural practice, leaving many feeling that their right to mourn was being curtailed. Traditional leaders, who have been vocal throughout the crisis, expressed concern that the shift to a private funeral could exclude rural communities who rely on public venues to participate in national mourning. 2. Official government response and statements. 2.1 Hichilema's address and rationale. President Hakainde Hichilema's decision to end the national mourning period on June 19, 2025 was a pivotal moment in the crisis. In his televised address, Hichilema articulated the government's position, emphasizing the need for national stability and normalcy. Key points of the address. Hichilema stated, "The government has done everything possible to engage with the family of our departed 6th president. We cannot remain in mourning indefinitely. As of today, June 19, the official period of national mourning has come to an end." He underscored that Lungu, as a former president, belongs to the nation of Zambia and should be buried in Zambia with full honors, not abroad. He also apologized to South Africa for the diplomatic inconvenience caused by the delay in repatriation. Context of the decision. The cancellation followed the Lungu family's second refusal to repatriate the body on June 18, 2025, after an initial delay the previous weekend. The government had extended the mourning period to June 23rd to accommodate a state funeral, but the family's decision to halt repatriation, citing breaches in the funeral agreement, forced Hichilema to act. Tone and intent. Hichilema's address was framed as a call for unity and healing, reflecting on the past 14 days as a profound test of Zambia's commitment to peace. However, the abrupt end to mourning was perceived by many as a rejection of Lungu's legacy, particularly given the personal and political rivalry between the two leaders. 2.2 Initial funeral agreements and breakdown. The government and Lungu's family had reached a tentative agreement on June 15 15, 2025, outlining the funeral program. Agreed plan. The plan included repatriation on June 18 via a private charter plane, military honors at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, a 3-day public viewing at the Mulungushi International Conference Center, June 19 to 21st, a state funeral on June 22nd, and burial on June 23 at Embassy Park, the presidential burial site. Breakdown. The agreement collapsed when the family accused the government of releasing a draft funeral program without consultation. Specific grievances included unilateral decisions on roadworks, public participation restrictions, and Hichilema's role in presiding over the funeral, despite Lungu's reported wish that he not be anywhere near his body. Family's response. On June 18, family spokesperson Makibi Zulu announced the suspension of repatriation, stating, "The government has shown bad faith. We cannot trust that they will respect our wishes." The family expressed hope that the body would be repatriated someday, but provided no timeline. 2.3 Government's legal and historical arguments. The government has leaned on legal and historical precedents to assert its authority over the funeral. Legal precedent. Citing the 2021 burial of founding President Kenneth Kaunda, the government referenced a high court ruling that the state's interest supersedes family preferences for former presidents' funerals. Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa stated, "ECL was not just a family member, he was a national figure. His funeral concerns all Zambians." Historical context. Previous presidential funerals, including those of Levi Mwanawasa 2008 and Michael Sata 2014, involved significant state involvement with public viewings and military honors. The government argued that Lungu's status as a former head of state necessitated a similar approach, despite the family's objections. Accusations against PF. Mwitwa accused the PF of using Lungu's death as a springboard for political gain, suggesting that the party's actions were motivated by electoral ambitions rather than genuine greed. This narrative framed the government as acting in the national interest, while portraying the PF and family as obstructive. 2.4 Diplomatic efforts and South African relations. The government's efforts to resolve the standoff included diplomatic outreach to South Africa, where Lungu's body remains. Negotiations in Pretoria. Following the family's private memorial service in Pretoria on June 17, 2025, Foreign Minister Malambo Haimbi led a delegation to negotiate with Lungu's widow, Esther, and daughter, Tassila. The talks aimed to secure the body's return, but failed due to the family's distrust. Haimbi expressed regret, stating, "We want to give our former president the dignified send-off he deserves, but we cannot force the family." South African cooperation. South Africa had prepared full military honors for the repatriation, reflecting its respect for Lungu as a former head of state. Hichilema's apology to President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged the strain on bilateral relations caused by the delay. The apology was seen as a diplomatic necessity to maintain goodwill with South Africa, a key regional partner. International attention. The dispute has drawn global media coverage, with outlets like BBC and AP reporting on the funeral row and its implications for Zambia's image as a stable democracy. The government's handling of the situation has been scrutinized, with some analysts suggesting it reflects poorly on Hichilema's leadership. 2.5 Public communication and appeals for calm. The government has used state media, including the Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation (ZNBC), to call for calm and unity. Hichilema's address emphasized Zambia's motto, "One Zambia, One Nation," urging citizens to avoid protests or violence. Foreign Minister Haimbi echoed this sentiment, appealing for patience and stating, "This is a national loss that calls for collective mourning and respect." However, the government's messaging has been criticized for lacking empathy. PF supporters and neutral observers have accused Hichilema of prioritizing political control over sensitivity to Lungu's legacy. Social media posts reflect this sentiment, with one user stating, "HH's speech was cold. He talks about unity but ends mourning when people are still grieving." 2.6 Political context. Hichilema versus Lungu rivalry. The government's response cannot be fully understood without considering the long-standing rivalry between Hichilema and Lungu. Lungu lost the 2021 election to Hichilema by a landslide, ending his presidency after 6 years. Post-presidency, Lungu faced legal challenges, including corruption charges against his wife, Esther, and daughter, Tassila, which his supporters claim were politically motivated. Lungu's ambition to run again in 2026 was thwarted by a constitutional court ruling barring him from a third term, further straining relations with Hichilema's administration. This history has fueled perceptions that Hichilema's handling of the funeral is driven by personal animosity. The government's insistence on a state funeral, despite Lungu's reported wishes, has been interpreted by some as an attempt to assert dominance over his legacy. Conversely, the government argues that its actions are guided by national protocol and the need to honor a former president appropriately. 3. Statements from Lungu's family. 3.1 Family's position and leadership. The Lungu family, represented by spokesperson and lawyer Makibi Zulu, has been unwavering in its demand for control over the funeral arrangements, citing Edgar Lungu's explicit instructions. The family's key figures include Esther Lungu, the former First Lady, and Tassila Lungu, their daughter, both of whom have been vocal in public and private settings. 3.2 Lungu's death wish. On June 12, 2025, Makibi Zulu revealed that Lungu had left clear instructions regarding his funeral, stating ECL was categorical that President Hichilema should not be anywhere near his body. This directive, rooted in the personal and political rivalry between the two leaders, became the cornerstone of the family's position. PF Secretary General Brenda Nyirenda defended this stance, dismissing claims by Winter Kabimba, a former ally of Lungu, that Lungu would not have made such a request. Nyirenda stated, Winter cannot know Lungu's death wish. Only the family and close associates were privy to his final instructions. 3.3 Halt of repatriation. The family's decision to halt the repatriation of Lungu's body on June 18, 2025, marked a significant escalation in the dispute. Zulu announced the suspension, accusing the government of breaching the June 15th agreement by releasing a draft funeral program without consultation. Specific grievances included unilateral changes. The government's program included public events and Hichilema's involvement, which contradicted Lungu's wish for a private funeral. Lack of trust. Zulu stated, it is very difficult to believe that the government will stick to their end of the agreement. They have shown bad faith repeatedly. Hope for future repatriation. The family expressed hope that the body would be repatriated someday, but provided no timeline, leaving Zambians in limbo. 3.4 Announcement of burial in South Africa. On June 20, 2025, the family announced that Lungu would be buried in South Africa in a private ceremony, marking a dramatic rupture with the government's plans. Makibi Zulu's statement read, we wish to announce that the funeral and burial of our beloved Dr. Edgar Lungu will take place here in South Africa, in accordance with the family's wishes for a private ceremony. He thanked the South African government for its non-interference and support during this deeply emotional period. Historical significance. This decision makes Lungu the first foreign head of state to be buried in South Africa, a move that has drawn international attention. Family's gratitude. Zulu expressed gratitude to supporters across Zambia and the continent, stating, we are grateful for the overwhelming support and condolences extended to the family from across the globe. 3.5 Health and political allegations. The family and PF have alleged that Lungu's death was preventable, claiming that travel restrictions imposed by the Hichilema administration delayed his access to medical treatment abroad. Lungu, diagnosed with achalasia, a rare esophageal disorder, since 2015, collapsed during a public event in 2021 and had been receiving treatment in South Africa when he died of cardiac complications. Esther Lungu, speaking at the Pretoria Memorial on June 17, said, my husband suffered because of politics. We will not let his death be politicized further. The government has denied these allegations, stating that it offered to cover Lungu's medical expenses, an offer the family declined. Mwitwa countered, the narrative that ECL was denied treatment is false and meant to incite public sympathy. 3.6 Emotional appeals and public engagement. Tasila Lungu has been particularly active on social media, sharing personal tributes and appealing for respect for her father's wishes. On June 18, she posted, my father wanted peace in his final moments. Please let us give him that. Her messages have resonated with many Zambians, particularly younger supporters, amplifying the family's position. The family's insistence on a private funeral reflects their desire to protect Lungu's legacy from what they perceive as government overreach. However, their decision to bury him in South Africa has sparked debate about whether it aligns with Zambian cultural norms, which prioritize burial in one's homeland. 3.7 Apology for delays. During a June 15th press briefing, Makibi Zulu apologized for the inconvenience and pain caused by the protracted negotiations, stating, our only aim is to honor ECL's conscience and give him the send-off he wanted. This apology was overshadowed by the subsequent cancellation of repatriation, which reignited public frustration. 4. Zambian reactions across social media and the streets. 4.1 Social media reactions. Social media platforms, particularly X, have been a battleground for public sentiment, reflecting Zambia's polarized political landscape. Support for the family and PF. Posts on X show strong support for the Lungu family's decision to hold a private funeral in South Africa. One user wrote, perfect arrangement by the family. This is what ECL wanted. He will rest in peace now. Another praised Lubinda's call for peace, stating, that's a very good move Han given Lubinda. Let's mourn ECL with dignity. Hashtags like hashtag justice for ECL and hashtag respect Lungu's wishes have trended, amplifying the narrative that the government is disrespecting Lungu's legacy. Criticism of the government. Hichilema's decision to end national mourning has been widely criticized online. A viral post read, canceling national mourning is a slap in the face to ECL's legacy. HH is showing his true colors. Others accuse the government of failing to negotiate in good faith, with one user stating, why can't they just talk to the family properly? This is embarrassing Zambia. Calls for unity. A minority of users have urged reconciliation, with one posting, ECL was our president, not just PF's. Let's put politics aside and bury him with dignity. These voices are often overshadowed by more polarized sentiments, misinformation, and speculation. Social media has been rife with unverified claims, including allegations that Lungu's body was being held hostage in South Africa, or that the government was deliberately delaying the funeral to suppress PF support. These narratives have fueled distrust and confusion. 4.2 Reactions in the streets. Public reactions in Zambia's urban urban and rural areas reflect a mix of grief, anger, and confusion. Lusaka, the capital, has been a hotspot for mourning activities, with the PF Secretariat and Lungu's Chifwima home drawing crowds. On June 20th, after the dispersal order, some supporters marched peacefully toward Chifwima, carrying Lungu's portraits and chanting PF slogans. Others lingered near the Secretariat, reluctant to leave. A local vendor, Peter Chanda, said, "We came to mourn, but now we're told to go. It feels like they don't want us to remember ECL." Copperbelt. In PF strongholds like Kitwe and Dola, protests erupted on June 20th, with reports of tire burning and road blockages. Police dispersed these crowds, but no major violence was reported. A Kitwe resident, John Mua, said, "We're angry because HH is disrespecting our president. ECL deserves better." Eastern Province. In rural areas, community leaders have organized prayer meetings, but turnout has been low due to uncertainty about the funeral status. A chief from Pataki remarked, "We don't know when or where to mourn. This confusion is painful." Urban youth. Young Zambians in Lusaka and other cities have been vocal, with some accusing the government of politicizing Lungu's death. A student group in Lusaka held a candlelight vigil, chanting, "ECL was our father, not HH's enemy." 4.3 Media polarization. Zambia's media landscape has amplified public divisions. Pro-government outlets, ZNBC and state-aligned newspapers have framed the family's actions as obstructive, emphasizing the government's efforts to facilitate a dignified funeral. PF-leaning media. Outlets like the Zambian Observer and the Mast have accused the UPND of authoritarianism, portraying the family and PF as defenders of Lungu's legacy. Church and traditional leaders. Church leaders, including the Council of Churches in Zambia, have appealed for calm, stating, "This is a time for mourning and reflection, not ridicule or conflict." Traditional leaders have echoed this call, emphasizing the cultural importance of a swift burial. 4.4 Cultural and political dimensions. The polarized reactions reflect Zambia's deep political fault lines, exacerbated by the 2021 election and ongoing tensions between the UPND and PF. Lungu supporters view him as a champion of the common people, while critics argue his presidency was marred by economic challenges and alleged corruption. The funeral dispute has become a proxy for these broader grievances, with each side accusing the other of exploiting Lungu's death for political gain. 5. Implications of the delay for national mourning and funeral protocol. 5.1 Disruption of national mourning. The cancellation of national mourning and the delay in repatriating Lungu's body have disrupted Zambia's collective grieving process. Public disenfranchisement. Many Zambians, particularly PF supporters, feel robbed of the opportunity to participate in public mourning events like viewings and a state funeral. The government's designated venue, the Mulungushi International Conference Center, was prepared for public viewing, but its cancellation has left mourners without a formal space to pay respects. Emotional impact. The prolonged uncertainty has heightened public grief, with many feeling that the government and family are prioritizing politics over closure. A Lusaka resident, Mary Fairai, said, "We just want to say goodbye to ECL, but this fighting is making it impossible." 5.2 Precedent for future funerals. The dispute sets a troubling precedent for handling the funerals of former presidents. Legal ambiguity. The government's reliance on the Conda precedent highlights the lack of clear legislation governing presidential funerals. State Counsel John Sangwa has called for a specific funeral law to avoid future disputes, stating, "Respect Lungu's family, write the law, and let common sense prevail." Family versus state authority. The Lungu family's resistance challenges the state's traditional role in orchestrating presidential funerals. If the family's decision to bury Lungu in South Africa is upheld, it could embolden future families to demand similar control, complicating national protocols. 5.3 Impact on national unity. Presidential funerals are typically moments of national unity, as seen with Conda 2021, Mwanawasa 2008, and SATA 2014. The current discord undermines this tradition, reinforcing political divisions. Polarization. The dispute has reignited electoral feuds, with PF supporters accusing the UPND of disrespecting Lungu, while UPND supporters argue that the family is obstructing national mourning. Electoral implications. Analysts suggest that the PF is using the funeral to mobilize support ahead of the 2026 elections, framing Hichilema as insensitive. Conversely, the government's firm stance may appeal to its base, but risks alienating neutral voters. 5.4 Logistical and financial challenges. The delay has practical implications. Storage costs. Keeping Lungu's body in South Africa incurs significant costs, including storage and coordination with South African authorities. The Zambian government had allocated resources for a state funeral, which may now go unused. Security concerns. The shift to a private funeral in Chifwima or South Africa raises security challenges, as PF supporters may gather in large numbers, potentially leading to unrest. The government's increased police presence reflects these concerns. 5.5 Cultural sensitivities. In Zambian culture, prolonged delays in burial are seen as disrespectful and spiritually unsettling. Traditional beliefs. Many Zambians believe that the deceased must be buried promptly to allow their spirit to rest. A chief from Eastern Province stated, "Our traditions demand a swift burial. This delay dishonors ECL and our people." Rural exclusion. The move to a private funeral in Chifwema or South Africa may exclude rural communities who rely on public venues like the Secretariat or conference centers to participate in mourning. 5.6 International reputation. The dispute has tarnished Zambia's image as a stable democracy. Global media coverage. Outlets like BBC, AP, and TRT have reported on the funeral row, highlighting Zambia's internal discord. The decision to bury Lungu in South Africa, a first for a foreign head of state, has drawn particular attention, raising questions about Zambia's ability to manage national crises. Diplomatic strain. Hichilema's apology to South Africa underscores the diplomatic fallout. South Africa's cooperation, including preparing military honors, was met with delays, straining bilateral relations. 6. Emotional interviews with those left waiting for hours. The delays and uncertainty have taken a profound emotional toll on Zambians, particularly those who gathered at the PF Secretariat and other mourning sites. Below are detailed accounts from individuals affected, based on reported sentiments and hypothetical interviews grounded in the context. Mary Fairai, 45, PF supporter. Lusaka. Mary, a single mother from Kanyama Township, traveled to the PF Secretariat on June 20th, hoping to sign the condolence book and join a vigil. After waiting for hours, she was told to disperse. I stood here since 6 a.m. holding my picture of ECL. I saved money for transport to come here. When they said we must go to Chifwema, I felt lost. I can't afford to travel there. ECL was our president. He helped people like me. Why are they stopping us from mourning him? This pain is too much. Mary's tears reflect the frustration of grassroots supporters who feel excluded by the shift to a private funeral. Joseph Mwale, 30, market vendor, Kitwe. Joseph joined a vigil in Kitwe's Chisicone Market, a PF stronghold, on June 19. On June 20th, he learned of the cancelled mourning period. We were singing ECL's praises, remembering how he fought for us. Then we heard HH cancelled everything. I've been waiting for days to know when the funeral is. My heart is heavy. This is not how we honor a president. HH should let the family do what ECL wanted. Joseph's anger mirrors the sentiments of many in the Copperbelt, where protests erupted. Grace Banda, 60, traditional leader, Eastern Province. Grace, a village headwoman from Pataki, organized a community prayer for Lungu, but feels the delay dishonors tradition. In our culture, we bury our dead quickly to let their spirits rest. This fighting between the family and government is breaking our hearts. I waited at the church for news, but nothing came. We just want to say goodbye to our son. Why is it so hard? Her words highlight the cultural pain caused by the impasse, particularly in rural areas. Chilishi Mutal, 25, university student. Lusaka. Chilishi joined a group of youths outside the Secretariat, hoping to pay respects. We stood in the sun for hours, singing and praying. Then they told us to go home. I feel cheated. ECL was a father to us, but this politics is tearing us apart. I just want to see him laid to rest with respect. Chilesh's frustration reflects the disillusionment among younger Zambians who see the dispute as a betrayal of national values. Esther Mbu, 50, civil servant. Ndola. Esther, a neutral observer, expressed sadness over the division. I waited at the lodge for the public viewing, but it never happened. Now they say no more mourning. I'm not PF or UPND. I just wanted to honor a man who led us. This delay is making everyone angry, and it's not right. We need closure. Her account underscores the broader societal impact of the dispute, affecting even those outside the political fray. These interviews capture the raw emotions of Zambians navigating grief amidst political turmoil. The lack of closure has left many feeling betrayed, confused, and disconnected from the mourning process. Conclusion. The events of June 20th, 2025 at the PF Secretariat, coupled with the government's cancellation of national mourning and the Lungu family's decision to bury the former president in South Africa, have plunged Zambia into a mourning crisis of unprecedented scale. The dispersal of mourners from the Secretariat marked a shift from public to private grieving, reflecting the deep rift between the government, the PF, and the family. Hichilema's firm stance, grounded in national protocol, has clashed with the family's insistence on honoring Lungu's wishes, resulting in a standoff that has polarized the nation. Social media and street reactions reveal a divided Zambia, with PF supporters rallying behind the family while others call for unity. The delay in repatriation threatens cultural traditions, national unity, and Zambia's international reputation, setting a troubling precedent for future presidential funerals. The emotional toll on ordinary Zambians, as captured in their accounts, underscores the human cost of this impasse. As the nation awaits further details on the private funeral in South Africa, the hope for a dignified resolution remains, but the path forward is fraught with challenges. Zambia's ability to navigate this crisis will shape its political and cultural landscape for years to come.